So we've done some crosstabs and we've done some box plots. Now we're going to get started on some scatter plots, which are fairly useful. And in this case, we're going to do a couple that are going to be about the life cycle of the precedent. And so we're going to use a couple tools here. We're going to use this select cases, and we're going to use the graphs and this scatter plot menu. So let's get started. We're going to first look at the justices and the majority of following opinions, and so we're going to see kind of the life cycle of where the support for this landmark came from in the future. So let's do select cases. And instead of all cases, we're going to do if condition is satisfied. We're going to start with this one. That'll give us one of those drop-down menus. We'll go over here, and we're going to do the first one is progeny action. So this was the action of the later opinion. We're going to say that equals 1 for cases that supported or followed the landmark. We're going to click and we're going to put in these kind of cursors, and we're going to look for, let me find it up here, judges who were in the majority, which is 1, or judges who were in concurrences. So concurring and majority judges for following decisions. That's essentially what that means. Okay, so hit continue. We're going to select cases if it meets those criteria. Okay, so that's okay. Filter out unselected cases. Don't ever use delete unselected cases. That'll cause you a lot of problems. So just it defaults to this one. If this condition, filter out selected cases, and you'll see what happens over here. So you'll page through and you'll see not a whole lot of cases were being followed with respect to Schechter poultry, which was a decision that kind of dropped away very quickly. And so let's take a look at this. So this plot's probably going to be a little sparse, but the distinguishing plot that we do next is going to be very full. So all right, let's do graphs, legacy design. We're going to go down to scatter, and in this case what we're going to do is we're going to just look at the ideology of those judges that followed Schechter. So let's take a look. We'll go down here, we'll grab our standard ideology measure. Our x-axis, as always, is going to be the decision date, and it's just going to create a really simple scatter for us. And so we're going to start simple, and as you see in the next lesson we'll get a little bit more complex. All right, and that creates a plot that looks something like this, which is not all that informative, but we'll see what we can make out of it. So let's double click on this window, bringing up the chart editor. Let's do the things that we always do. Let's get rid of the aspect ratio. It's a history plot, so let's do 300 by 600 here. Kind of a time series plots should be a little bit longer. That gives us 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100. Those all look pretty good. And close that out. Let's get this scale fixed. Always remember to do the scale, because that's the most important thing. You don't know what you have until you fix and set an even scale. And that looks a little bit more likely. So the support for Schechter was coming early, and it was coming from the more conservative justices, which makes sense. And over time, we pick up a few people down here, end up using Schechter a little bit later. Generally speaking, this is a declining trend. One thing that we can do here is we're going to use certain types of markers for different types of decisions. And so following, we're going to make these squares. So if you click on one of these entries, right, it'll bring up this menu. And so the first thing that we'll do, the first thing I'd like to do is make sure that the borders are black. So click on the border, we'll click on black, make sure it's good. Let's change the marker type. We're going to use squares for following decision, and those are way too small, so we're going to use square size 10s. And let's click on fill and put in a little bit of filler on it. And do something along those lines. Should be good. If we click apply, that'll change that to that perspective. That's not bad. And then we want to do one more thing. This nice thing about SPSS and these statistical packages is you can kind of put in these projections, and so I'm going to have you put in a projection to tell you something. So we're going to fit line at total, and we're just going to put a linear regression. Right? We're going to regress a line through the middle of those points. And when we get that, we have r squared linear. 16 is actually the r squared. The r squared tells you how much variance in that pattern you can explain with one trend. And so we can explain 16% of that on the basis of kind of ideology. So that's really good, actually. It's a pretty strong, trend. Pretty much anything over 10 is usually fairly significant. So good. We've got a good line in there. What that tells us is that, right, over time, the support for Schechter was coming from conservatives, and it declines to a mean, or declines to a minimum. You get some kind of outlier. You get some liberals using Schechter a little bit later for different purposes. Okay, let's go here. Let's fix our points. Let's do this. And net looks to be pretty good. Let's see, we might fix that. Actually, it looks fine the way it is. So let's just keep it that way and close it out and we're done. Okay, make sure that we save this. We're going to save this as, here I'm going to save this as Schechter. Scatter plots. Okay, so let's go through and do the next one. So instead of the ones that followed, we're now interested in those that distinguish Schechter-Poultry. So we're going to take those distinguishing opinions and judges that were in the majority or concurring. We're going to plot those in the same way that we did. So once we change the select cases, you'll see these kind of change on the bar over here. This down, we're going to graph it the same way that we always did. So let's go to Legacy Designs and Scatter Plots. Simple scatter. We're going to do the traditional point and decision date just like we did the last time. Okay, don't really need anything there. Okay, so we'll go through, we'll run it, and we'll get a plot that looks something like this. Now let's do the editing like we always do. Click on it. Let's put that full window out. Let's change the things that we need to change here. And I'm going to do the regression last because it seems to be a little bit of a weird thing. I think we have enough numbers so that the regression looks a little bit different in this plot. So let's do what we can first. We're going to change this, get rid of the aspect ratio, change this to the same size as the other plot because we're going to want to look at and compare between the two. Apply that. Out here we're going to change this scale to the same one we've been using everywhere else. Let's do -1, 1, and 0.25 should be fine. For whatever reason it didn't do 0.25 there. Change it, let's do 0.25. Apply there. Decision date, let's change the labels real quick. That's just the date of decision. Okay, so we're good there and everything's good. Let's fix these. I'm going to use X's for distinguishing positions. We'll make those 12s. These are already kind of, they're already black, so they'll match up fine, and we're good. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to put in these elements. And because they've been causing me a little bit of issue, I'm going to pause here and then start up again. Okay, so let's put the last component in, the element, and so we're going to go do the same thing we did, fit line at total, And so what this one does is it puts this little equation in there. I don't really care for it. Let's see if that'll take care of it. Yes, it does. Perfect. And so this gives us the same plot that we had for the other one. Okay. Notice here, as far as distinguishing behavior with Schechter, there's almost no relationship at all here. It's almost completely flat. So in terms of people that were supporting Schechter, clearly there was an ideological bent and it took place early, right? As far as distinguishing, once we get through this era, right, pretty much everybody distinguishes Schechter. It was sort of a dead precedent by the time you get through this area, right? So, sort of interesting in itself. We're going to map this out a little bit better, and you'll kind of see how this works later. Very good. So again, save your document, and we should be good.